Have you ever thought about what you actually need to run your IT and services in your startups? In fact, what is really interesting is as your business grows, the amount of software and platform that you have to manage also grow exponentially. And it becomes harder and harder when you start thinking about what is the information that you need and to actually be really effective. This is even more important, especially that right now, a lot of companies are thinking about introducing generative AI and automation in their companies. You're in luck today because I'm speaking to Sarah Eggleston, founder of Fflow, and she has found a solution to take away some of your headaches. And I'm sure you want to find out why. After a career as a software developer, including a couple of stints consulting, Sarah decided that she'd break the cycle of software agencies using excellent but disconnected software. People talk a lot about roller coasters when it comes to entrepreneurship. Well, starting a business, according to Sarah, is like surfing. Waves buffeting from all directions, randomized by storms, surge, and occasional flat calms. Based on this experience, Sarah has a lot of advice on things to do and, of course, what not to do. Welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. I'm Makangu from Athena Leaders. As a tech consultant and startup advisor, I will answer live the burning question that you have on your journey to Series A+. Subscribe and tune in every week for top tips to meet amazing guests, startup founders, investors, and more. More importantly, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Sarah, welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startup live show. How are you doing today?
Well, that was really quite the introduction. Thank you.
Well, you do have quite the experience, and I'm really excited about what you are bringing in on the show today, your experience in general, what you are doing with Fflow. There's just so much to unpack. And of course, I mean, the tech world is buzzing right now, but let's be honest, there's a lot of headaches for others, especially those who are non-technical founders. But before we get into that, can you tell us a little bit about ourselves and about Fflow?
So I had an international childhood. My father worked at the UN and the WHO, and we lived in India, Denmark, Switzerland. I went to a few different schools over my childhood. Then I took up a career in software, and I went to work for IBM. I spent many years at IBM in and around developer roles, and I spent some of the time as a consultant. And that was when I first started thinking, I'm not sure this software time tracking and resource planning software is really working for me. Maybe there must be something out there. And I had a quick look and I couldn't see anything. So then I thought, well, how about I go and work for an agency and see if they know stuff that I don't? And they did. They had a lot of software, and like you said in the intro, it was really good. A lot of it was brilliant and modern and usable and all these great things. It just didn't talk to each other. That was all. So we would have symptoms like at the end of the month, the CFO would send an email almost every month saying, please stop billing time to these projects that don't exist anymore, because the time tracking system and the finance systems, they didn't talk. So they were separate. And then you'd have the project manager running through going, panic, somebody's critical is out on holiday. And they didn't know because the project software and the HR software, they're separate. They don't talk. So then my thought was, maybe if I build something that does a little bit of all these functions, you've got all that data in one place. So that was how I started to build Fflow.
Right. I can relate to everything that you've said, especially the disconnection between different departments and the software that they use. In fact, I was speaking to a business, someone working from a team in a company that I was working with, and they were talking about the duplication of efforts, right? Time tracking is really important, and the amount of time people have to think about where am I tracking my time and how am I sending this information to different people? So if I want to track for my own purpose, for my own productivity, is different than tracking time for the project, which could be different for finance, and God knows what management also see. And that's a hell of a headache, and the amount of time that people lose
It is, and you've touched on something that's really important to us, which is inclusivity and bringing
Mm,
the same data to different teams, but sliced in different ways. So the
mm,
underlying information is the same, right? Which is you worked some hours and some of them are billable and some of them are not billable. And for example, the project manager and the finance team and the customer, they mostly only care about the billable
mm,
hours. Your management will care about the non-billable hours as well, because they'll be interested in how much time you're spending on the overheads. You want one system that records all that information. If you're copying it into multiple places, errors are going to creep in. If you've got back office staff who are doing it, who don't necessarily aren't as quite as close to it as you are, there's bound to be
mm.
mistakes sooner or later. And that duplication, that waste of time, that's something I've always hated, is doing stuff twice.
Me too. I completely agree. And in fact, another thing that I love about what you're doing with Flow, it reminds me of Calendly. Remember back in the days where now, of course, we have so many tools, not just Calendly, that we use to book sometime in our calendars. You know, even if you, especially during COVID, people didn't run businesses that day, but they still have a calendar for people to organize virtual calls. And when Calendly came up, they were solving just a very, very specific problem. How do we simplify and reduce the back and forth when it comes to booking meetings in general? And I guess Flow is doing the same, but really looking at another aspect that is core and is wasting time when it comes to time management.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So now, can you tell us a little bit about where you are with Flow? Because I believe it's out there, it's been launched already.
It is launched already. I should say at this point, with my consultant hat on, my advice would always be, if you're starting a business, start it the sensible. So you come up with some idea, you turn it into designs, visuals, maybe on paper, maybe some kind of quick no-code solution or a WordPress site, and then you go and you evaluate your product market fit. You test it out with your users, and bear in mind I'm a developer, so I didn't take my own advice. What
Yes.
I did do is the other thing that startup founders do, which is, I can't find a UX expert, and if I could, I couldn't afford them anyway. But I'm in the rural part of England. I don't have access to the way people in big cities do to local resources. And I was like, I can't find a designer. I'm no good at design. I can't find this. I can't find that. I have no money. I'm bootstrapping. You know what? I have time and I know how to write code. I will write code. So
You went full on into the code mode.
I went full on into code mode as a side project. So although we've been building Flow now for quite a few years and it looks more established than it is, that's because I just started building first. And I did it. I still had consultancy roles. At one point I had a full-time job, so I've mixed it up. So there's been a few detours. I'm now full-time on Flow, and we're now focusing on all the really good stuff around marketing and sales and product market fit that we should have done right at the beginning. Free advice, don't do what I did.
Thanks. And I'm definitely going to echo that. Free advice, don't do what Sarah did. And in fact, if you really want to have more information on that, check out the backlog of episodes that we have on the podcast. We did one about if I build it, they will come, I think. It's
Doesn't
really
work.
about what Sarah was saying. Now, interestingly, when I did that episode, and actually there's quite a few episodes that I have on the podcast, is about helping non-technical founders build their platform, and also going back in the mindset of everything that you said, Sarah, kind of understanding how can I create mock-ups, prototypes, going out in the market, and all of that. Now, from your perspective, coming from a tech background, first we're going to look at two different aspects. The first one will be the easiest part, and the second will be the hardest part. So what do you think was the easiest part for you when you had the idea of Flow and says, okay, off I go?
The joy for me was using the tech stack that I can choose. Programming languages, first of all, they're like spoken languages in that there are some that are quite similar and there are some that are very different. If you know French, learning Italian is relatively straightforward. If you want to learn Japanese, it doesn't help at all. They're very different alphabets and so on. Programming languages are like that as well. There are some that are quite similar to each other and some that are different. But for me, they also have personalities. And one of the things that has been my joy recently is to discover a programming language that for me is really friendly and has good user support and a lovely community built around it, and that's Ruby on Rails. So for me, the joy was building in Ruby on Rails and as well getting rid of deadlines. So many deadlines, it turns out, are artificial, or, there's a trade show and some exec wants this feature live by this date, and you're like, really, you're better off just getting it right. So I'm very happy that at the moment I track what has happened, but I don't try and set artificial, and obviously I've got a long to-do list with what I'm going to work on next as well, but I don't try and set a hard deadline of when any particular thing is going to happen. And I try and encourage that with my team as well. We try and work as much as possible, unless there's a customer commitment. We're a deadline-free zone.
So it's kind of thinking about how do you promote productivity and getting things done without the pressure of arbitrary deadlines in a way.
Yeah. And some of that is about knowing yourself. So there are some mornings where what I find happens is if I'm in a good mood and I'm enthusiastic, I already know what I want to work on, and that's what I'll do. And the occasional day when you wake up and you're like, I don't want today to happen, I'm not here, I'm not with it, I have a backlog with a bunch of tickets, and I just go, right, discipline, take the top ticket off the backlog, and it looks awfully like, no, I don't want to do that. And then you get to the end of it and you're like, actually, that was really good and it's finished and I'm glad I've done it. So yeah, I balance the two things, but I'm always doing something. It's just about the enthusiasm levels.
Yeah. And in terms of, because of course you've built a platform, but one question I get asked a lot, and in fact, I'm going to be speaking at Founder Institute London, one of the startup accelerators, and actually I have another event I'm speaking to today as well. And one of the things that we always look at when we're explaining this world of building tech to non-tech founders is the differences of the different roles that you have to have in the tech sector. So for example, when you go to hospital, you have nurses and doctors, but people know that I need a certain doctor for a certain thing. So you wouldn't get a dentist if you're going to deliver a baby. Simple as that. Yeah. Yes, when it comes to the tech world, it's really hard. When I got my degree in software engineering, I had my families. I went back to my parents in Glasgow, and some of the friends will come and says, my printer is broken. I'm like, great.
Not me.
I know it's tech. I get that, but there's a kind of a software. And when you are coming from a non-technical background, there are so many things like front end, back end. And when you talk about Ruby on Rails, the front end is the back end. We talk about UX and all of those skill sets. So how have you managed that in terms of you building your own product? Did you wear all the hats? Did you outsource some of them, for example, some of the designs, or did you just do everything yourself?
I did nearly everything. I got a bit lucky. So the tech industry used to, when I first joined it in the 90s, the different roles were done by different people, very, very different people, especially in IBM. So you would have a database admin and nobody else touches the database. You would have an operations team that would be responsible for deployments and getting things into production. And the developers would have no clue of that. You'd have separate testers, separate developers, separate front end, separate back end. Everything was separate. But I got a bit lucky. I thought it was unlucky at the time. Because what happened was I got onto a pattern of being on a project that would be cancelled or would fail one way or another. And so I got bounced between different projects and different roles on different projects, because you just get squeezed into, if your project ends unexpectedly, you get moved into whoever's just looking for someone to squeeze into some random role. So unusually for my career, I had actually worked in a lot of parts of the stack. And the place that I also had spent the most time is probably the most useful one, which is it's an IBM product called WebSphere. And it's the equivalent of the server in the cloud that runs. So if you're on AWS, you'll have a server. It doesn't matter which cloud you use. If you're on Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud, there will still be a server in the cloud somewhere. And this was just IBM's flavor of that server in the cloud, which sort of sits in the middle, and it coordinates between the database and the front end and has the business logic in it. So it happened that I'd worked on all those individual bits when they were still separate individual bits. And then in the world we have now, we have this thing called full stack, which means you do everything. You do the database, you do the middle, you do the server management, you do the front end, you do the CSS of the styling, you do the full stack. And I'm a full stack developer with primary love and focus in that core engine heart, the business logic, the middle, if you like. But I know a bit about databases. But a lot of modern full stack developers, the generation coming along now, they have always been full stack, right? They started having to learn everything. And the thing I see them struggle with is which bit fits where, because if you haven't seen them as separate entities and you just see the whole thing combined, it must be really, really hard. So I got lucky. I happen to know all bits of the stack. I did outsource the designs because I can't draw and I can't do visual stuff and make it look good. So that was on the technical side. That's almost everything I've outsourced. I also did speak to a consultant about strategy and branding early on. Probably too early, but going back to, you were asking about what was easy and what was hard. I'm sorry, sales and marketing is so much harder than writing code, right? I know I just said there are challenges for full stack devs, but which there are, but you understand the challenges. When you're doing sales and marketing, you have no idea. Someone coming from being a coder, I'm used to getting feedback. When you code something and it doesn't work, right, it tells you it's wrong. And these days, there are languages that don't, but most programming languages these days will say, you got this wrong on this line, go and fix it. Or, this didn't happen here at this point. When you've written a competitor analysis, is it good? Is it bad? Finished? Quarter finished? Do I need to go and rewrite it? If you don't have someone to tell you, and when you're starting up, you don't have someone to tell you, you're like, I have no idea. Have I done a good job? Have I done a job at all? So for me, that's really, really hard. I much prefer the clarity of feedback that you get when you're writing code.
Gosh, I relate to that 100%. And I think these were the hardest part of even running my business myself, coming from a technical background as well. It's a lot of people that I meet. I go to events, conferences, and work with startups. And they're like, oh my God, how can you take my ideas and break it down and give me different paths? And this is how we can start. This is a roadmap. I'm like, yeah, actually, I would love that. But this black box of marketing and sales is a completely different story. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I do appreciate and love entrepreneurship in a way, is because it doesn't matter what your strengths are. There's always going to be a part of you that is also going on a journey of learning. And you kind of need to have the full package in a way, whether it's obviously understanding the basics of everything as much as you can, and then also having the right people in your team to push you forward.
To augment, exactly, yeah.
Yes.
And the other thing is playing to your strengths as much as you can. So, for example, I've building some information for myself around the analytics of where we're getting the clicks from, and for me, analytics is a thing. Okay, that's nice and technical. I can start measuring things. I can go and look at, we're getting these clicks from this source, and then we're getting these, they visit this page when they get in, and so Google Analytics are equivalent. You can get a lot of information out of that and start to turn it into a feedback mechanism that works for you if you want to. Whereas I'm sure someone who started from a marketing or business or sales background would already know that stuff and might not need the analytics. They might just be able to look at the website and go, this is a good content and this is not so good. And I don't know, maybe you're doing A/B testing. But everyone's going to have their own way of doing things in the way that work for them. And you really find out in the early stage when you're very short of money, you really find out how to, okay, I'll just have a go at making this work for me rather than doing it the proper way and the way with my consultant hat I would advise you do if you have funding.
Yeah. And I guess there's this other thing as well, because I did a few, for those who are interested in finding about strategy for bootstrapping, there's quite a few interviews that I've done on that topic as well. And it's really, bootstrapping helps you to think differently about the skill set that you have and how do you outsource or delegate the right way, and how you can also play about with when it comes to the areas where you need support. I guess personally for my own business, when it came to the marketing and bootstrapping, in fact, the podcast, the reason why I started it was, one, I really wanted to create that platform where I can have early stage startups. Of course, I do interview startups and other consultants and anybody that can add to the startup ecosystems. But I really wanted to have a space for early stage startups to also promote their businesses, promote Fflow and the things that they are working on so that they can get discovered. But on the other hand, one of the reasons why I liked it was I just realized that if I have a podcast and I get to meet amazing people, I get all this energy, it just makes it so much easier rather than just recording videos standalone, which doesn't give you the same energy. But of course, videos are quite big these days. So it was a way of, yes, it takes a bit of time, but when you think about that, it's a marketing strategy that works with my personality, with the way I think, and also stop my team coming and says, Naili, you're meant to record this video. You haven't done it. So I always recommend that people find their gift or that part of them that makes marketing bearable.
Or tech, or whatever is the thing that you really don't want to do. Find a way to outsource it, or find a way to get someone else. I'm always happy to jump on a call with someone for half an hour and say, what are you thinking about around the tech, and can I help? And yeah.
So talking on the topic of text, and of course, anyone who's listening to this and really are thinking about, I gotta want to get some advice, do remember that Sarah also does consultancies around tech, whether it's for startups or for large businesses as well. I mean, with a career in IBM doing absolutely everything, she's definitely the woman you need to go to. And we also run one-to-one free mentoring sessions once a month. Reach out to us, book a call with us, and we're more than happy to kind of give you feedbacks and also connect you with other amazing consultants and founders and in our network so that you can get the additional support. On that topic, Sarah, what are the kind of things that you see a lot when you're working for especially small businesses that are either trying to go through a digital transformation or building a product? What are some of the issues that you see a lot and that you advise them with?
There's a lot of fear. If you're not technical, it seems like this really scary area. And there's also this sense of, I need a product. I need to get it built. That's the first thing I need to do. When actually, if your skills, I mean, even if you're technical, but even more so if you're non-technical, no, do everything else first, right? The product is going to be last. You're going to build your community. I am not, I build stuff from scratch. So I'm used to building whole products, but I, sometimes a spreadsheet or a Facebook group or a WordPress site is the right answer, right? The best solution is the one you understand and you know how to go and build. And that's true for you, but it's also true when you do get to hiring, which should come hopefully a bit later. The best technology that the tech team should be using is one they already know and love. Right. So if you know WordPress, use WordPress. If you don't know WordPress, it's probably the hardest CMS to learn. So learn something else like Squarespace or Wix or, I'm not an expert on those, by the way. It's not my specialist area. But my impression is WordPress is easily the most complicated. But if you already know it, it's also the most powerful. So play to the skills of the things you already know. Use those. The other thing I see a lot is people going AWS. AWS was the first, is the biggest. It's also by a long way the most complicated, and in most contexts the most expensive. So it just feels to me like if you're a startup, you don't want to start with AWS. They offer a lot of packages where you get the first year free. Have a look at the price that they say that's worth, because if they say to you, well, this is so many $1,000s that you're getting for the first year free, well, remember that's going to be so many $1,000s every year thereafter. And by the way, I started out on AWS too, because I thought the same things. And I have migrated since to a much lighter weight platform. It's called Render. It's one not a lot of people know about. And my running costs are more like, I think they've just gone up from sort of tens to the low hundreds a month. So, it's a lot cheaper. But really, to be honest, if the pricing were the other way around, I might still stay. Because for me, the huge thing about it is it's 2 button clicks to do pretty much everything. Right. Whereas AWS is just so complex. And what you'll find is if you go AWS, you will need to hire a team to manage AWS for you. If you go Render, you might be able to do it yourself, or your developer might be able to do it themselves, just as a few 5-10 minutes here or there. It's a much lighter part of the day and the week. going to AWS too quickly would be my other. So going to tech too quickly and then building too quickly, go slow on these decisions. Take them all slowly and talk to me. If you're about to make that decision and you want to talk it through, give me a shout, because or any technical friend, and just say, am I doing the right thing? And look at the cost. And also, the thing I do know from having worked at IBM, a lot of my friends are IBMers. And so often the advice they give me would be excellent if I had the resources of IBM, but it's not excellent for a startup. And I'm like, you do know, don't you, that there's one of me and that I have 25 hats and that this piece of work has to fit into a couple of hours, otherwise it won't get done. And the advice you just gave me was, go out and run this thing that's going to take me several months on my own. And yeah, I mean, do ask for advice, but remember, you don't have the resources of IBM. It's amazing how many advisors seem to think you do. So
I completely agree with that, and I will even extend it to say that everything that you've shared, Sarah, should be applied to anything that you want to add in your tech stack. If you want to even build an automation, look at the price structure of the tools you want to use, and always be wary of anything that gives you 3 months for free or however long for free, because the reality is that you will get into it, and the more comfortable you are after you've learned the platform, the more you're just going to continue using that. And we all know that's the strategy for marketing and for them to have clients. So always look at the cost, right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely check out the cost. We do offer a free trial, but for us, that's also about, you want to kick the tires before you get in there. Go and have a look and see what it does for you.
Exactly.
But we're upfront about what the costs will be. You can see them straight away. Go and look on the pricing page.
Yeah, but I think just kind of going back to what you said about AWS, I definitely resonate with that, because on a lot of the groups I am, a lot of the accelerators that I'm part of, AWS always gives you free credit. So I think it's this association that people have today. If I need a database, is AWS. Of course, some people know that there are other options out there, but it's very hard to explore because the one that's talked a lot about. So whenever there is something that is well used, and sometimes it's also a question of how we're using that. And then the second aspect of things that you've mentioned, I really want to emphasize as well, is understanding the fact that you have limited amount of time. So when people talk about automation, you might want to take a tool, but if you don't think about your workflows and all the different platforms, you get excited about using too many different tools for one solution, but you also need to learn them, but you don't document them, which means that once you've changed one aspect of things here, because now that this button used to do this, it doesn't do this anymore, it affects your entire flow of how the data goes into the different platforms. And not many people think about that as well.
Yeah, and then the opposite is true as well, which is, I'll just do this myself in a spreadsheet. And actually, for a few pounds or tens of dollars, you could buy a tool that would do it for you and save you hours out of your day. So sometimes it's right to spend the money. I think what's always right is to do the evaluation. Just check, sanity check yourself. Is the time sink too big? Is the money sink too big? What will it be the long-term maintenance costs, not just the free trial period? What am I saving? What am I not saving?
Yeah. So before you jump, do take a few minutes. And as Sarah said, if you have any friends that you can even call up and have this discussion, or a CTO advisor or the likes, do spend the time talking to them, because that can save you a lot of time and money. So now, Sarah, we're going to play a little bit of a game. It's kind of a quick fire round questions. And just going to ask you a few questions. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. They will allow us to get to know you a little bit and kind of look at your experience and Fflow from a different perspective. You ready?
Okay.
Right. First question. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I'm a routine person. Same time every day is best for me. And it's kind of not early nor late.
Brilliant. So you're a routine person. Yeah. Love it. Actually, this is the first time I've had that answer, so I'm not going to forget that anytime soon. No, it's brilliant. Break things up a bit for me. Second question. What are three of your favorite tools?
My favorite tools. It's a love-hate thing. I hate GitHub, but I also love it when it's there.
Yeah.
I have a love-hate relationship with Google Drive as well, because it's wonderful for writing things, but you will never find it again unless you were the person who put it there and you know where you put it. One day I'm going to write a tool to find things in Google Drive.
I'll sign up for that already.
And Render, love, absolutely love render.com. If you haven't come across it, which you probably haven't, such a delightfully streamlined UI with so few buttons in it, and they just work.
Yeah, brilliant. So, next question. One mistake that you've made that other founders should watch out for. Now, for this one, we're gonna put a caveat on that because you've already shared the idea of the marketing aspect and not going out and understanding the needs from the market before you start building. So we've got that already, so you can't go back to that. So the question is, one mistake that you've made as you're growing your business that other founders should be aware of.
I'd probably go with spending money on things, although we've sort of discussed this already, but spending money on things, the early spend on I came from IBM, I wanted to do everything properly and, register with Companies House. I registered with Companies House too early because that affects your EIS and SEIS. Get somebody to do strategy and branding and set up the brand. And I spent a lot of money on that before I really understood why I was spending it. I probably needed it. I needed that help. But I should have waited until something hurts. Don't do it just because you think you need it. Do it because it's hurting that you don't have it, is what I've learned from that. And now I spend a lot less money on things.
Yeah, it's actually a very good insight there, especially the part on registration and the impact it had on your business. And wait until something hurts before you spend money on it. There are so many tools out there, so I definitely brought that one. Now, one thing that you've mentioned at the beginning of this session is your international childhood and your background. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've learned and how your traveling and living in other countries kind of influence who you are today as an entrepreneur?
So India was amazing for so many reasons. I learned to be vegetarian there and to love it. I learned to love schooling. It is in India, even though I was in an international school and everyone there is well off and privileged and all those good things, we had still the culture. I think because we were in India, that going to school is a privilege. It's something not everyone gets to do, and it's something that makes your future what it will be. And I was in India from age 5 to age 10. And it wasn't until I was 15, so I was already out of the country several years before the first time I sat in a school class and thought, this is really boring. I don't know why I'm here. Because in India, you couldn't have that thought, because you would just be, I am so lucky to be getting the education I'm getting. And that's not just university, that's everything from your age 4 up sort of is, I'm so lucky. Whatever the teacher says is something I'm going to listen to and be interested in. And that means still I mostly find reading is something interesting to me. I'm always learning. I've learned 3 new programming languages since I was 40. I'm still learning every day. I'm still learning everything there is to know about sales and marketing, frankly, and I haven't got very far yet. But that culture of loving learning, of lifelong learning, having a teacher is a privilege, because so much of the learning you do on your own, you realize how hard it is when you're just, reading books is not the same as having someone explain to you how it fits the context of your life.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm also a lifelong learner, and I can definitely relate to what you said, because I believe that learning is a privilege and it enriches your life in so many aspects. And in fact, even getting into software engineering for me was a mistake. I stumbled on it at college, pretty much at school, as I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And I was in Glasgow and I was thinking, well, what do I do next? And someone mentioned programming to me. I'm like, what the hell is that? So I bought a book on Java, and I taught myself, because I was doing a business study and I dropped out because I felt like I cannot sit there with someone, you were 16 or something, and someone is explaining to you microeconomics and the likes, and I'm like, no. I'm so sorry. I'm more of I can see what you're talking about, and I love to practice. So when I got the book and I learned Java for about 6 months, and then I re-enrolled to start doing my HND in software development, that's where I felt like I've arrived. I get it. You talk as little as you need in the class, and I can get yes, and I absolutely love this idea of learning and expanding. So how do you find the time? Because that's another issue that entrepreneurs have. How do you find the time to put learning in addition to everything that you need to do to grow the business, whether you're going down the bootstrap route or looking for funding?
Well, I know I'm privileged in that I don't have children, so that gives me time in the evenings in a way that lots of people don't have. But that said, if I absolutely need to learn something for the business, I will do it on business time. I will be going out and researching alternatives to Google Analytics and which is the best and why, and alternatives to AWS and which is the best and why. All of that I will do as part of my day job. And for me, it was a useful discipline to get away from writing code, to start doing some of those things in the day. Because just sitting down and writing code was easy for me. It was my default. And it's worth having a think about what your default is and then trying to step out and do different things. I do read nonfiction, well, fiction and nonfiction in the evenings, and I can. And I enjoy it. But if I'm really not enjoying it, then I won't do that. If it's not fun, then don't do it even outside work. So I'm not one of those people who, you have to get up at 5 a.m. and read a self-help book before you don't. You really don't.
Goes back to the routine you've mentioned earlier. Figure out what your routine is so that you can be productive based on what you need.
Yes. Really great summary.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you said about doing this on business time? Why is that you had that emphasis or that focus on doing certain things in your business time?
Among other things, I really do believe that when I was at school, I hated homework. This is strange for someone who loves learning, but I would do as much as I could in the classroom. I would work as hard as I could. I would be totally concentrated and focused, and I would do as much as my homework as I could during the class. If we sometimes they'd start you off there, and I'd be like 3/4 of the way through it, scribbling like mad. I hated doing stuff at home in my own time, and to some extent, I haven't changed. If your business work should fit into your working day, and when it doesn't, it penalizes people who have to go home and look after children. So if you have some of the team who can work in the evenings and some who can't, that makes it really hard to assess their comparative work efforts. Plus, it's not just if you spend more time on something, certainly as a coder, I really know this. If you work a 9 to 5, the last 2 hours, you do not write productive code. You normally spend the next morning debugging it, fixing it, making it work again. Your brain only does so much work in the day. It's not going to do more. You can sit at the desk for longer, but you can't achieve more necessarily. So yeah, I would go for shorter days, concise days, but really concentrate and focus when you're in them. Take breaks, because that refreshes your brain. And time box things. So yeah, build an hour into your day to go and do a comparative analysis of whatever it is, to make that decision about whether you're going to spend money or invest your time, which is the best use of all your minimal resources. Make the time to make those decisions, to work, to see the business from outside rather than just sit and do complete tasks.
It's a bit like the difference between working in your business and working on your business, right? So most of the time we sacrifice strategical decisions the time that we need to make strategical thinking and decisions for the business, especially when it includes learning something that we need to get us to a certain level. So those are things that we do later on, rather than being things that we kind of needs to prioritize in the day. And I love your advice on time boxing and making it very visible my brain is fresh. This is when I really need to tackle some of that. I love coding, or if you are a non-tech person, it could be you might love marketing. I might say why, but hey, we all have things that we love and hate, and you probably do more marketing or more sales because it's kind of your comfort zone. But as Sarah, you've mentioned, the idea of time boxing and really making clear to yourself that this is the time where I'm going to work on other areas and learn what I need for those areas.
And if you, like me, you get to the end of the day, and for me, if I haven't written code, I get to the end of the day and I think I wasted today. I didn't do anything. I didn't achieve anything. I started writing tickets with all the non-coding stuff that I was doing, even that you don't really need it. It's not the same as code where you need a description or a technical description of what you're going to do. I started writing tickets just because then I got to go done. I have moved this across the board and it's gone into the done column. And then I can go, oh, look, I did these 5 things today and none of them was code, but I did some things.
Yeah. And I think for anyone who's actually technical here, we should take this moment and appreciate the mindset of a technical person, right? So other people have a to-do list, but Sarah has tickets for things that should go on the to-do list because you're using your backtracking system as a to-do list.
And it's a done list now, and it's wonderful.
Exactly. And it goes back to, you need to know yourself and what works for you and make it work for you to be productive. And it's not just about all of the 100 books that you might have read, advice that you heard, but it's really about how you are adapting them to make yourself more efficient and to flow for yourself.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Sarah. This was brilliant. And before we go, is there anything that you'd love to share with us about Fflow? I'm sure that people who are listening to that, thinking a little bit about time management in their offices, how do we simplify that headaches that we don't need to live with, just as we didn't have to live with booking meetings back in the day of Calendly. Now we have this impressive system that helps us to unify time management across departments. So how do we find out more about that, and what else do you have coming up when it comes to Fflow?
So go to fflow.io. You will find there there'll be links. You'll see them. You'll find them. We have a YouTube channel. We have a Calendly. You can book some time with us. We have a features page which shows you what we've been working on most recently at the top, and then you can dig down through it to find out all the features. We love to help. We love to know what you want. So there's a button on the landing page that says send us an email, and it's called Doorbell, and just ask for help and ask us a question, and we'll get straight back to you. We love to hear from our users. We love to talk to our users about how they're using Fflow and what they're getting from it. Yeah. Oh, and a tip for early stage startups who are short of money: you can get free interns from lots of places. One is Naily, I think you said an HND. The modern version of that now is called a T level, and you get placement students, and they are free. And there are T levels in quite a lot of subjects, including tech. And the other thing is there is a government scheme where you can get interns from your local university, and you need to pay the minimum wage, but the government will refund you, or refund the university, depending on how I think different ones manage it separately. So it's always worth going and talking to your university. If you're short of people and that catch-22, you have no time, you have no money, you have no people, you have nothing. Go and talk to a university about getting some of their students. They're enthusiastic, they're really talented, some of them. And because you're not investing loads of money, even if it doesn't work out, you can still walk away thinking, I tried something good. And generally my finding is a lot of them are good, and it's a winning program. In the UK, I should say, but I'm sure other countries have similar deals.
Brilliant. They do say save your best for last, but I like to believe that this is one extra gem that you've shared alongside the wonderful advice that you've also shared with our listeners. Thank you, Sarah. It was a pleasure having you on the show. And to all our listeners, do subscribe and like this episode. If you love the show, anybody you want to recommend to come on board as a guest, whether you are a founder and you're thinking, yes, I want to come in, do get in touch with us. If you are thinking about starting on your own, or you've already started and you are having some issues, especially when it comes to the technical aspect and the product, join our one-to-one free mentoring sessions where we listen to you, help you on your journey, and also connect you with other people such as Sarah that can deal with your headaches, making sure that you don't spend a lot of money on AWS and find other deals, and also help you with your tech baggage and headaches. Do remember, dream, build, play. Let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.